It started quiet, buried in ink, names crossed out before you could think. Files stack high, dust on the truth. Stories too old to be considered new. Phones don't ring when the walls agree. Silence has shareholders immunity. Not one monster, not one face, just systems built to buy more time and space. They didn't need lies, just delay. Let the calendar do the dirty work anyway. By the time it's read, by the time it's heard, everyone's older and nobody's stirred. They knew before we did. They saw the damage, sealed the lid. No sirens, no confessions bid. They knew before we did. They didn't pull the trigger, didn't spill the blood, just moved the problem, called it good. No smoke, no scandal in the grid. They knew before we did. The paper shakes in a steady hand. Truth doesn't shout, it demands to stand. Every quote weighs more than fear. When the cost is power, the truth gets dear. Not faith, not sin, not belief or prayer, just protection loops in polished air. Meetings held with no blame sticks. Moral math done in politics. No villain speech, no closing scene, just signatures clean and conscience is clean. The damage done in rooms like this, where nobody screams, nobody slips. They knew before we did. They mapped the fallout, measured risk. Let years erase what shame never did. They knew before we did. Not one man, not one myth, just quiet consent dressed up as discipline. No blood on hands, just on the grid. They knew before we did. If evil screamed, we'd run from it, but it whispers policies, edits scripts. Truth doesn't bleed, it waits its turn, while reputations stay unburned. They knew before we did. That's how the damage always lives, buried deep where blame can't stick. They knew before we did. And if you ask how it survived, it wasn't darkness, it was organized. No crime scene tape, no broken kid. They knew before we did. The story's not who fell from grace, it's who stayed clean by moving the case.